Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to the final race before the summer break, the 14th race weekend of 2025, the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. And as usual, the Hungarian Grand Prix is, in most years, the final race before the summer break. And yeah, it has been a not really a surprising weekend in terms of the running we've had so far. McLaren, obviously, miles ahead of the rest as expected, and looks like it's going to be a good fight for pole nonetheless. But it is, pretty much the field is mostly as expected, I would say, except for maybe one team, which we'll get into in the build up here to qualifying. But yeah, good to be here in Hungary. Hopefully it's an exciting weekend, but I'll be honest, given that it's going to be a dry race as well tomorrow, I think we're in for a pretty bog standard, boring Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, because there is one team that is just so clearly far ahead of the rest of the field. So, yeah, I think it's going to be, like I said, a bog standard weekend, similar to what we just had at Spa last week in the Belgian Grand Prix. But yeah, final race for the summer break. Hopefully it goes off, with a bang this first half of the season, which has been, in terms of the excitement of the season so far, it's not been great. I will say we've not really had too many great races this year. We've definitely had a couple, but not what we were quite hoping for coming into the season. So yeah, and especially as of late, some of the dry races have been quite poor, I must say, in terms of quality. But we'll see what we get here. But of course, this is qualifying, and qualifying is the most important part of the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. It's not impossible to win the race here in Hungary from second or third of the grid, but if you go and look at the record of people who have won here, normally it is from pole position, because it is such a great place to obviously start here in Hungary, and it is, as history has told us, has been very successful, except for, funnily enough, the last four editions of the Hungarian Grand Prix have not seen the pole position man actually go on to win. So, yeah, that is an interesting stat, let's put it that way. But again, most times around this track, the person on pole is the race winner. So, it's really all about qualifying if you want to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. And that's why I think McLaren are going to dominate this Grand Prix weekend, because they're clearly the quickest team. And as long as the drivers deliver their best laps in qualifying, then it should be a McLaren front row. And then at that point, McLaren, pretty similar to last year's race, are going to dominate and win quite easily. So, yeah, McLaren definitely the massive, clear favourites this weekend, without a doubt. But as usual, in this build-up to qualifying, we're going to go through what we usually go through, which is the results of practice so far, looking at the practice 2 results specifically, which is the most representative session we've had so far. We'll go through the sector time data to see where certain teams are quick and not so quick, and just in general look at the pace so far. And then, obviously, I'll get into my own qualifying predictions. We'll do a round for the teams as well before qualifying, as to how they all should perform and what they should all be aiming for. And obviously, we'll hear from you guys in the chat before qualifying begins. And as well, I will do another channel update, because this live stream today going to be my last live stream on the channel for 4 weeks. I'll let you know why soon, as I'll get into that probably in 20 or 30 minutes time after we've gone through some of the data from the weekend. Just want to say quickly though, before we get into that data, hope you guys are doing well, as we have now entered the month of August. Hope you're all doing well no matter whatever part of the world you're in, whatever circumstances you're going through. Hope you're all having as best a time and as safest time and healthiest time as possible. And I hope you can join me today in watching along and enjoying qualifying in Hungary. Qualifying does tend to be pretty exciting around this track, especially given a lot, it's shorter of a lap. It is compared to a lot of other tracks. So it should be still an exciting qualifying session, but maybe not as exciting as what we've had at other tracks so far this year. But yeah, hope you guys are well. And as well, quickly before I get into things, there is a poll, of course, running in the chat. Let me know, out of the 4 options I've put in there, who do you think takes pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix? Will it be the man who was on pole last year, Lando Norris? Or will it be Oscar Piastri, who won this race last year from second on the grid? Or will it be Ferrari with Charles Leclerc, or even Max Verstappen in the Red Bull? Let me know between now and the start of Q3, which is in just over 2 hours from now, and we'll see who you guys have voted for as the most likely driver to end up on pole position. And yeah, we'll get through those results as we begin Q3 in just over a couple hours' time. But let's get into what's happened so far this weekend. And here are the results from practice 2. Now, Lando Norris quickest, a 1:15.6. McLaren 1-2, no surprise. And 0.4 of a second, the McLaren were quicker than the next best car, being Ferrari with Leclerc. It was looked very good this weekend, I must say. Leclerc and Ferrari have as well. I think Ferrari at this point, you'd have to say, pretty comfortably the second best team on the grid. And that's been the case, really, since probably the Austrian Grand Prix, which was about 5 weeks ago. What I was going to say is that lap time of a 1:15.6 has already been lowered in practice 3. Oscar Piastri did a 1:14.9, which is incredibly quick. That is 0.3 of a second, that 1:14.9, 0.3 of a second quicker than last year's pole. So yeah, McLaren are incredibly quick, and pole position today is going to be maybe not a full second quicker than last year, but it will be not that far away. I'm expecting it to be probably a mid 1:14 pole position today. And McLaren look like the clear favourites to do that. We'll see what other teams can even get into the 1:14s later in qualifying. But yeah, McLaren, easily the best team. No surprise there. We all called that. And then, yeah, Leclerc third. Ferrari have looked consistently the closest team to McLaren all weekend, which, again, I wouldn't say is necessarily a surprise, because Ferrari have been in dry conditions, I think, the second best team for the last few weeks. So, yeah, Ferrari looking good, but definitely not quite on the same page as McLaren. They are definitely missing 2 to 3 tenths, probably at best, compared to McLaren, which is really all in, I would say, the middle sector, or mostly in the middle sector, and then a slight bit in the final sector as well. But then after Ferrari, Aston Martin, who of course were absolutely honking in at the Belgian Grand Prix. They had the slowest car at Spa, but here have come here and look like they are mixing it with the front-running teams. 4th and 5th in practice 2. They were also, I think, 6th and 7th in practice 3. So Aston Martin genuinely do have really strong top 10 pace for qualifying today. And they are the team, without a doubt, to watch out for in qualifying today. They're not going to obviously fight for pole. They're not going to fight even, I'd say, for the top 3 on the grid. I don't think that's possible for them. But a third row grid slot is absolutely doable for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso has had some fitness issues so far this weekend. He missed practice 1 because of a lower back injury, suffered from porpoising at the Belgian Grand Prix, which probably explains why they were so slow at that Grand Prix. But yeah, since then has stepped into the car, has only got quicker as the weekend's gone on, and we know Alonso is going to be the quickest Aston Martin driver. So he is the one to look out for. And yeah, Alonso as well. Remember, this is historically one of Alonso's favourite tracks. He's had 2 pole positions here. He's always been a top 10 runner at this Grand Prix in any type of car, basically. Even the McLaren Honda days, he was always in the top 10. So, yeah, Alonso, watch out for him. He's going to be very, very quick today. And Aston Martin look very quick as well. Probably the quickest Aston Martin have looked probably since the Canadian Grand Prix, where Alonso was, I think, on the 3rd row of the grid there. So, yeah, good to see from Aston Martin, who definitely need a weekend like this. They are 8th in the championship, and, yeah, a few points are needed for not just the drivers, but the team as well. Lewis Hamilton is 6th. Hamilton did not have a great day yesterday, but looked better in practice 3. I think Hamilton will probably end up not that far behind Leclerc, and Lewis really should be 4th or 5th in qualifying today. I don't think that is unrealistic to expect from him, and would put him in a pretty, I'd say, good position if he was to qualify, say, 4th, to fight for the podium, even though it's his teammate ahead of him, most likely, in 3rd. So, yeah, Hamilton, I think once he shows his absolute true potential, I think Hamilton's in a good place this weekend. George Russell 7th. Mercedes, even though they've gone back to an old suspension, I think rear suspension for this Grand Prix weekend, which Kimi Antonelli mistakenly revealed to the media, I think on Friday or Thursday. Mercedes, I don't think look any quicker with that going back to that new suspension, or the old suspension rather. Maybe the drivers are more confident with that, but the pace isn't there. They look to be, at least in qualifying trim, probably the 5th best team here in Hungary. Maybe 4th best ahead of Red Bull. Red Bull are a bit all over the place this weekend, so it's hard to judge really where they are. But yeah, Mercedes do not look good. They really do not look good. They look like they are quite far off the pace of not even just McLaren. They look like they're probably 3 to 4 tenths of a second off the pace of even Ferrari. So yeah, Mercedes are not in a good spot. And I would say going into qualifying, I think Aston Martin looked like the quicker team. So yeah, Mercedes not in a good spot whatsoever, and they just seemingly are getting slower as the season goes on, which is really sad to see, because I thought this weekend would be a good Grand Prix for them, but yeah, they just don't look like they're quite on the level where I was hoping for them to be, which is kind of where Aston Martin were in practice too. Isaac Hadjar 8th, Racing Bulls looking good, and Hadjar looking consistently quick, so watch out for him. That Racing Bulls car as well, very quick through the corners, as we know, no matter what track. Sonoda 9th, Red Bull, again, all over the place. The front end of that car looks absolutely terrible. And of course, around a track like this, the front end is what you need really to be quick, and that's why McLaren are so quick and are the best team on the grid, because their front end is the sharpest by far out of any of the teams. And then Antonelli completing the top 10. And yeah, Antonelli only, a 10th behind his teammates. So Mercedes in general just not quick, unfortunately. And then the rest of the field, Oliver Behrman in 11th. Behrman and Haas, I got to say, looking pretty decent. Hulkenberg 12th. Ocon in 13th, and then Verstappen 14th. Verstappen was also outside of the top 10 in practice 3. Red Bull not looking good. I do think, though, Max will be a lot better in qualifying, because I think when it comes down to it, I think Max will, I wouldn't say produce the goods, because I don't think there's many goods to be produced today. That Red Bull car genuinely is quite far off the pace, but he will be a lot better in qualifying. He's not going to end up outside of the top 10. I'd be amazed if that did happen. I think he'll be right in the mix with Aston Martin and Mercedes in qualifying. Not quite on the pace of Ferrari. Ferrari definitely are quicker than Red Bull. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, Max will be a lot better in qualifying. So if you're a Max fan or a Red Bull fan, don't worry. It won't be quite this bad in qualifying. And then Lawson 50. Lawson's got to step up. He, nearly 4 tenths off the pace of his teammate. That is not good enough whatsoever. So yeah, Lawson needs to be doing a lot better there. Carlos Sainz 16th. Williams look like they are possibly the slowest team here. I know they were a tenth and a bit quicker than Alpine, but Alpine I don't think quite showed their true potential in practice too. I think Gasly didn't do the best of laps. So yeah, it's a fight really between Alpine and Williams as to who is not going to be the slowest team. But Alpine and Williams are the two slowest teams this weekend. There is no doubt about that. But Haas and Sauber, keep your eyes on them. They're also looking pretty decent and are also, I think, dark horses in that midfield scrap. Gabriel Bortoleto especially, keep an eye out for him in qualifying, especially given that he's got such a good record as of late compared to teammate Nico Hulkenberg. So yeah, keep an eye out for Bortoleto. Sauber definitely have got not a great amount of pace, but decent enough to have them in maybe a decent position in qualifying, but we'll see ultimately where they end up. Anyway, those are the results of practice 2. Let's get into the sector time data to understand where teams are quick and not so quick. Now, sector 1 is not really representative whatsoever of the pace here. Ferrari, the quickest team, Aston Martin second, and McLaren third. And then you got Haas just after them. Mercedes and Red Bull a bit slower. Red Bull, maybe you could say sandbagging to a degree, because you would expect them to be a bit quicker in this part of the lap. But yeah, the first sector is meaningless, really. We've seen here before where I think Williams, when they had a really quick car down the straights in 2023, I think had like the quickest car in the first sector, but then the rest of the lap it was absolutely terrible. So, and ultimately resulted in them being very slow. So yeah, Williams, a great example of that a couple of years ago, and that again is a great example of why the first sector time, as long as you do a good first sector in terms of not making any errors, then that is good enough, really. But it's really the middle and the final sector is what is important here in qualifying. And the middle sector is what is really not the entire difference between McLaren and the rest of the field, but it is most of the difference between them and the rest of the field. McLaren, 10th and a half quicker than the next best car being the Ferrari, which is pretty good through the middle sector, just not quite on the level of the McLaren, because Ferrari, you can see, quarter of a second quicker than Red Bull and also Mercedes. So yeah, Ferrari look good through the corners here. They're just, again, not on the same level as McLaren, which is a shame. So yeah, Ferrari and McLaren, the two quickest teams through here. Obviously, McLaren, the quickest. Aston Martin, then third quickest. Only just quicker than Red Bull and Mercedes, but Aston Martin, as I'll show with the final sector as well, consistently quick through the whole lap. So their car is legitimately good around this track. It's not only quick through one part of the lap, like we see sometimes with certain midfield teams who end up being really quick, where they'll only be quick through one part of the lap and then the rest of the lap they'll be pretty average. Aston Martin are quick through all parts of this track. So watch out for them today. Racing Bulls only slightly slower than Aston Martin, Red Bull and Mercedes. Again, keep an eye out for them. They have a very good car through the corners. And then just a bit off, you've got Haas, Alpine, and then Williams and Sauber on pretty much the same pace. I do expect a tad more pace, though, from Sauber in this part of the lap. So, yeah, I think they'll do a bit better in qualifying in the middle sector because I think they've got a bit of a better car than what was shown in practice 2 through at least this part of the lap. So, yeah, Williams and Alpine, I still think the two slowest teams. And then in the final sector, McLaren the quickest team, not by as big of a gap as it was in the middle sector, only half a tenth separating them and Aston Martin. Aston Martin very good in the slower speed corners. And then Sauber, you can see, much better in the final sector. Racing Bulls looking good. Ferrari losing almost 0.2 of a second. Ferrari definitely could improve in the final sector, but McLaren, in comparison to Ferrari in the final sector, that's really where McLaren show just why they're so good. Because again, that front end on the McLaren is so sharp. Mercedes, pretty much on the same pace as Ferrari, and then a bit of a drop off to Haas and Alpine. And then Red Bull, pretty much 0.4 of a second slower than McLaren in the final sector. And again, that is all down to the front end. We've seen it all season. The front end of the Red Bull does not get into the apex whatsoever, whilst the McLaren, it does. And the McLaren drivers don't need to really throw the steering wheel aggressively at the apex to get it to really bite. The Red Bull drivers are really having to fight that front end quite a bit. So, yeah, that's why Red Bull are not quick this weekend. Again, the front end of that car just isn't there like it is for McLaren, even for Ferrari and Aston Martin. So yeah, Red Bull, alarming their pace. But again, it will be better in qualifying. They're not going to be this far off, but ultimately, the reason they're significantly off the pace compared to McLaren is because, again, the front end difference between the two cars is quite massive. And then Williams, the slowest team, not really a surprise through that part of the lap. But if we go back to the results of practice, in terms of the pecking order, McLaren clearly are the quickest team. I think they're probably quickest by about 1/3 of a second at most. I do think, though, Leclerc, because he is such a great qualifier, I think he will get the gap down to maybe 1/4 of a second between him and whoever the McLaren is on pole. But I think that's going to be more down to him than necessarily the Ferrari car being, that close to McLaren. So, yeah, McLaren, quickest team. Ferrari second. Third, I would say Aston Martin, but I don't think they necessarily will end up as the third best team in qualifying. And the reason I say that is because even though Fernando is great, I love him, he is not the quickest of qualifying drivers, especially compared to your, Leclerc's, Norris's, Verstappen's, Russell's. So, yeah, I think that might cost Alonso a slight bit in qualifying today. But Aston Martin, I would say, if, let's say, Max Verstappen was in the Aston Martin, I think Aston Martin would be third quickest team if they had a proper good qualifying driver in that car. So Aston Martin, I'd say third. Fourth, I'm going to say Red Bull because I do think they'll have a lot more pace in qualifying. Fifth, Mercedes. Sixth, I'll go Racing Bulls. Seventh, Alpine. Not Alpine. Seventh, Haas. Eighth, Sauber. Ninth, Alpine, and 10th, Williams. That's what my pecking order is for qualifying and maybe the weekend, or at least mostly for the race. But yeah, that's what I would say the pecking order is. So keep your eye on Aston Martin. They have a lot of potential today to do quite a lot and get a really big result that they haven't had in a while. So yeah, keep your eye on them. But in regards to the pecking order and what I think it is, let me get into my final qualifying prediction as we've got just over an hour to go until the session gets underway. So McLaren, I think, will get the front row. Oscar Piastri, though, I think takes pole position just about by half a tenth over Lando Norris. Leclerc, I think, will end up third and about a quarter of a second off pole. Hamilton, I'm going in fourth. Verstappen, I think, will somehow drag loads of pace out of that car and end up fifth, even though I don't think that's necessarily representative of how quick the car is. Max is an alien, as we know. So yeah, Max, I think, will just about clinch fifth place. Alonso, I'm going in sixth. George Russell seventh. Kimi Antonelli eighth. So Mercedes, I think, will lock out the fourth row. Isaac Hadjar ninth. And Oliver Behrman, I think, will sneak into the top 10 for Haas. That's my top 10. If you're wondering why I've not put Lance Stroll in here, it's because Lance Stroll regularly disappoints in qualifying. So, yeah, that's why I've not got Stroll in the top 10, because I dare not predict him to have a good qualifying because, again, he so regularly disappoints. So that's why I've got Alonso as the only Aston Martin in the top 10. But that's my qualifying prediction. Let me know your qualifying prediction, guys, in the chat or in the poll running at the top of the chat, and I'll make sure to read out some of your predictions before we get into this session. But let me just quickly post. Oh, not post. We're not going to do that yet. But let me just put the timer back on screen, is what I was going to say. And yeah, just over an hour left until we are underway for qualifying. And yeah, make sure to get your comments in the chat as well. Make sure to smash the like button. If you haven't already, let's try and get up to, say, 30 plus likes if we can in the next 10, 20 minutes. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, as we do qualifying and race watch-alongs for most Grand Prix on the calendar. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And talking of content, let me just quickly, for a few minutes, do a channel update. So, as you guys will know, I am not doing a race watch along tomorrow for a couple reasons. One, McLaren are going to absolutely obliterate everyone. Secondly, it's going to be a dry race. And we know in the dry at this track, you can't overtake, basically. And given the racing we've had lately in the dry, it's not been very good. So, yeah, that's why I'm not doing a race watch along, because I'm anticipating a very boring Grand Prix, to be honest, which is sad to say, but that's just what I envision happening given the weather conditions. Also, you know, how the pecking order looks. We're not going to have a competitive fight for victory, really. Well, we will for the first corner, but after that, it's going to be a lights to flag victory for whoever, pretty much. Yeah, there will not be a race watch along tomorrow. So today's stream, this stream I'm doing right now, is the last live stream I will be doing until the 30th of August, which is in 4 weeks exactly from now. And that'll be for qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, which is obviously the first race back from the summer break. But before we get to that, again, just want to update what the plan is for the summer break. So, obviously, I'm doing this stream today. Tomorrow, there will not be a race watch along. But then on Monday, there will be a podcast reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. So if you want to hear my thoughts on whatever happens in the race, make sure to check that out. That'll be uploaded on Monday afternoon, late evening, something like that, or early evening. And then, again, there will be 3 videos in the summer break. A driver rankings video for the driver, for the season so far. A driver lineup prediction video with a bit of a twist. And then a video going on about the championship battle between the 2 McLaren drivers, where I will give my prediction at basically as to who I think will win the championship. And that prediction with that prediction, I will obviously justify it, give my reasons, but also I'm going to predict what I think the podium results will be going forward for the rest of the season in that video. That'll probably be the final video I do before the summer break finishes. And then at the very end of this month, the last weekend of this month, August the 30th and 31st, we're back for the Dutch Grand Prix. So yeah, that is the plan going forward. So yeah, I'm going to be pretty busy the next week getting a couple of the other summer break videos finished. One of the summer break videos is already done and is scheduled for upload. I've just got to make a thumbnail and all for it. But yeah, the what do you call it? That's the plan for the summer break. And then we'll come back at the very end of August for the rest of the season. And one thing I will say in regards to the rest of the season, where after this weekend we've got races in Zandvoort, Monza, Baku, Singapore, Texas, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. Some of those races I will be doing both a quali and race watch along, but there will be some of those races where there won't be a race watch along. That's all I'm going to say. We'll have to see, obviously, which ones I decide to do and not to do. But yeah, that is just something I want to pre-warn you guys about. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, because again, McLaren are just so dominant around most tracks, so that's going to make things a bit more boring. But secondly, I am probably going to be starting, and that's one piece of good news I do have, is I have been accepted and given an offer to go on to the master's course for writing for film and TV, basically. Or, well, let me re-clarify what that means. Writing for film and TV, as in, it's a course basically teaching you about how to write for film and TV, rather than I'm not actually going to be writing for film and TV, at least not yet. Yeah, I have been luckily. I got I got a good enough grade from my BA, so I've got the BA honors degree in applied media, and I've been given an offer for the master's course, which I will fully accept and all that in the next couple weeks. So yeah, pleased to announce that. And but what that means in terms of the channel is, of course, that course starts at the very end of September. So obviously after that, I'm going to have that on my plate. So that's another reason why I won't be able to do, you know, quali and race watch-alongs for every Grand Prix for the rest of the season, because yeah, I'll have that on my plate as well, and I'll need the occasional rest and, you know, and that stuff. So yeah, just want to clarify that in terms of the races we have after the summer break until the end of the season. But yeah, there you go. There's the channel update, and like I said, this is today the final live stream for 4 weeks. So hopefully it's a good one, and then hopefully you guys can join me again for the Dutch Grand Prix weekend at the very end of the month, and hopefully you guys do all have a great summer break. But we've still got, obviously, this qualifying session yet to come in just under an hour's time. So make sure to get your comments in the chat. Let me know, what do you think is going to happen today in qualifying? Can anyone upset McLaren? What do you think Aston Martin will do? Can Alonso get an amazing result? What can maybe Max Verstappen do with the very difficult car it looks like he has? Let me know in the chat, and we'll get on to some of your comments for the next, say, half an hour. So, yeah, let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Good to see a good amount of you here. I'm just going to have a quick drink. And, yeah, we'll now get into your comments, like I said, for the next half hour or so. And then we'll do a quick roundup of the teams and how they should perform in this session. Hello to Astro, hello to Efron, hello to Blade, Serugara, Dom. Yeah, hello to Efron, Pa. Hope you're all doing well. Astro gives his prediction: pole for Piastri, and then Lewis second, Alonso third. Yeah, bold and hopeful, I know. Not actually impossible though. Alonso finishing third, which is good to see. So yeah. Russell fourth, he then says. Leclerc fifth, Antonelli sixth, Hadjar seventh, Ocon eighth, Tsunoda ninth, Albon 10th. That would be a pretty wild top 10. I assume you think Lando's going to probably make a mistake and crash out qualifying. Right. And hello to Rooks, obviously, in the chat. Good to see you. Hello to Wild Cornovii. As what do you call it? Astro saying Piastri already has 8 career wins, which is as many as Daniel Ricciardo, one less than Mark Webber, and as many as both Lando and Leclerc. Yeah, it has been an incredible rise to stardom for Piastri. I always have rated the guy ever since I saw him in F2. I've always thought, yeah, this guy's gonna be something. But I did not think this guy was gonna be doing what he's done this quickly. I mean, first season, he gets his first podium, which no one really expected, given that how McLaren started that year. I don't think anyone even expected McLaren to get a podium in the whole season for any of their drivers. So that was, brilliant for Oscar, and not just one podium. He had, I think, 2 podiums that year, maybe 3. I can't remember exactly. And then last year, around this time last year, got his first win, and now a year later, he's had, and since that first win, 7 more wins, and he's leading the championship by 16 points over his teammate. So yeah, it's been quite the rise, and obviously Piastri having 8 wins to his name, the same as Leclerc, who has been in Formula One a lot longer. For me, Leclerc is still a better driver than Piastri, and those 8 wins for Leclerc compared to what Oscar's had with his 8 wins. Leclerc's 8 wins mean more in terms of Leclerc hasn't had a car as good as what we've seen with McLaren. He just has not. But I think one thing that's become clear with Oscar is, even though he's not the best driver on the grid, and I don't even think he's in the top 2 or maybe even top 3 best drivers on the grid, in terms of his career, you can almost tell how it's going to go. He's going to end up, and this is not a criticism, this is a good thing, what I'm about to say, that he is going to end up statistically with much probably better numbers than maybe his talent deserves compared to others. If you know what I mean. Kind of in a similar way to, say, Nelson Piquet back in the day. where Nelson Piquet has got what is it 25 plus race wins and 3 world championships, which is, comparable to a lot of great drivers we've had. Yet Piquet, I mean, the reason he's not really talked about is because obviously he's an absolutely trash human being. But I think Piquet, with his career, is a great example of someone who, statistically, his career statistically looks better than he probably actually was. And again, I think that's what Oscar Piastri is going to have with his career. Which again, not criticism. If Piastri ends up winning 3 championships and wins, 30, 40 races in his career, brilliant. But the point is Oscar is, again, I think his career will statistically look better, a lot better than others, even though talent wise others are a lot closer to him, or maybe even you could argue better than him. So yeah, and by the end of this season you'd expect Oscar Piastri to have at least 10 wins to his name, in terms of 10 total wins in Formula One. And personally, I think Oscar Piastri will have a world championship to his name as well. Whether it'll be his only world championship, we'll see, but a championship is a championship. Dom says, to be honest, almost everyone is focused on 2026, so Ferrari will take P2 unchallenged, possibly winless too. Possibly. I do think they'll win a race before the end of the year. I think with Leclerc in that car, I just think the opportunity will present itself and he'll take it. But it is possible that, yeah, Ferrari could end up finishing second in the championship, beating Mercedes and Red Bull, yet not having a win to their name, even though Mercedes won in Canada and Red Bull have won. How many races have Red Bull won this year? Is it 2? 3? I can't remember exactly, but yeah, that is a possibility. But like I said, I think Ferrari will win a Grand Prix this year. I think in terms of the next earliest opportunity, I think either Monza or Baku, I think will be that 2-3 weeks is where you can expect a Ferrari, maybe not Ferrari victory, but a strong Ferrari challenge to win at those 2 races. McLaren, though, at all the remaining races are going to be very strong, so we cannot deny this. Yeah, Astro saying I reckon Ferrari will win at least 1 race this year, maybe 2 or 3. I think they could if they, and maybe they will add maybe a small little upgrade, between now and the end of the European season, maybe just to make themselves a slight bit quicker, especially for their home race at Monza. But what do you call it? I could see Ferrari, as long as Leclerc is on top form, I could see Ferrari ending the year with 2 or 3 wins. It is possible. Ferrari have got better as the year's gone on, but ultimately it depends on, just how close they are compared to McLaren, and whether Leclerc can get close enough to where he, as a driver, can make the difference. So we'll have to see. But I think this weekend, and definitely the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, I think McLaren are going to win those races easily, because they're in terms of the circuit layout, it's perfect, essentially, for McLaren. Um, Let me see if I can find some other good comments. Michael Rowley saying Piastri is only going to get better. Absolutely. Piastri, I'm not sure how great he'll, like, the in terms of how he'll look at his peak. I'm not sure quite how he will look. Maybe I don't see Oscar Piastri ever being as good as Max Verstappen. I just don't think that's ever gonna happen. Max is the best, and I think pretty much everyone on the grid has accepted that Max is the best, and he will always be the best until he gets too old or too bored with with Formula One. Um, but I think Oscar could get himself into a position at his peak where he's top three best drivers on the grid consistently, year in, year out. But it is a very high quality grid, so you got to be absolutely on it and brilliant to to be at that level. But yeah, we've only got what, another 40 minutes. I think in probably about 10 minutes, I'll post the stream link out one final time. Um, Rook saying my prediction for the race due to Chaz missing it: double McLaren DNF, epic four-way battle between Leclerc, Hamilton, Alonso, and Russell. Knowing my luck, probably. Um, yeah, there's been. I don't think it's happened too many times where I've missed a race watch along where it's ended up being an amazing race. There was one that we missed, which was because of we had a problem with our internet for whatever reason. This was years ago. I think it was it was that Brazilian Grand Prix in 2019 where Gasly finished on the podium. I did a race watch along for basically every race that season except that, because again we had an issue, and I was so gutted because that was such an amazing race. Yeah, that's the only one I can remember where I've missed a race watch along since I started them, and it's ended up being a you know an absolute classic, let's say. Obviously, 2020, I didn't do any race watch alongs, but I took a break that year, didn't I? Really, from streaming and content. So yeah. Um, Congrats, Jazza. Thank you for that. And yeah, very much proud and happy to have got onto the Masters. My long term plan when I started the foundation degree in media 3 years ago, my long term plan was to to go for the Masters, but obviously it was dependent on my grades, and thankfully I've done well enough and been able to to get onto it. So yeah, very much an accomplishment, and hopefully, because this course that I'm going to be doing is online, thankfully, which will help in terms of doing the channel, because obviously I won't have to go in person studying, and it's also a 2 year course. Yeah, hopefully in 2 years from now, I can say that I've got a master's in writing for was it Script and Screen is what it's called. So yeah, really looking forward to it, and yeah, very proud that I've been able to get this far and get the qualifications, get the degrees, and yeah, hopefully it will lead to something great in the future. Um, Let me just scroll up a bit because the chat scrolled down accidentally. Astra says Max has won 2 races in that difficult car already, so is it really that bad? Well, earlier in the season, it was not as far off the pace as it is now. So at Suzuka, that was still an amazing performance by Max Verstappen. I'm Yes, the car it wasn't bad, but the car was not as good as the McLarens. It just wasn't, and he still somehow got pole and won. So yeah, he deserves full credit for that. And same for the race at Imola. The McLarens were quicker, but he produced the goods, and he was the major reason why he ended up winning. But again, in those weekends, the car, whilst it wasn't on the same pace as the McLaren, it was only maybe a couple tenths at most off. Since then, there's not been really many, if any, Grand Prix where that's been the case. And that's the issue. Is since, say, Max's last win, the McLaren has got better, the Red Bull hasn't. In fact, the Red Bull, you could say, has got worse since then. So that's why he hasn't won a race since, unfortunately. And the reason I say unfortunately is because I was really hoping we were going to get a three-way championship battle. I mean, as many drivers in the championship battle as possible is what I was hoping for. But the Red Bull car just isn't good enough, and also Max's results lately have just not been strong enough. Remember, Max has not had a podium since the Canadian Grand Prix, which was nearly 2 months ago. So, if you want to be fighting for a championship, you've got to be at least scoring podiums consistently, never mind wins. So, yeah. And in terms of the rest of the season, I think Max can win maybe another Grand Prix or two, but it's going to be difficult, especially now that Ferrari have, I think, pretty clearly now moved to being the closest team to McLaren. If anyone outside of McLaren is going to win a race, it's probably going to be Ferrari because, again, their car is a lot better than, I won't say a lot better than the other two cars, the Red Bull and the Mercedes, but Ferrari have only got better as the season's gone on, whilst Red Bull's car, Mercedes' car have got worse. And that's unfortunately the way it is. Astra just wish Stroll would retire and go play tennis or something. One day, it'll happen. Um, Nelson PK won 23 races. I knew it was 20 something. I couldn't remember exactly. Um, KH for their prediction says sure be Piastri, Leclerc, Norris, Max, Lewis, Alonso, Russell, Antonelli, Hulkenberg, and Albon. Interesting prediction. Um, Dom says Lando appears too focused on being honest and clean rather than trying any gamesmanship. He's very similar to Bottas. I think actually that is a good comparison. I think he's very similar to Valtteri Bottas in terms of pure speed. He on his day, he's right up there with the best we've got in Formula One. But in terms of a race situation, skill wise, mentality wise, he's just not that guy. I've said it a few times on my podcast episodes. Make sure, by the way, to check out my last one if you haven't. That I did for the Belgian Grand Prix. I said it in that one. Lando is just not that guy. He's just not a. He's not a guy who, in the races, produces the goods to win a Grand Prix. He's not the guy who makes the overtake when he really has to, or delivers in the moments where he absolutely has to. He hasn't got what it takes compared to his teammate and your other great drivers on the grid: Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, Alonso. He hasn't got what it takes in a race situation to deliver. And no matter how quick you may be in qualifying, if you don't have what it takes in a race situation to deliver most times, you're not ever going to win a championship. It's just not going to happen. And there's not going to be a situation, especially after this season, if Piastri wins the championship. There's never going to be a situation where if Lando has a dominant car, where he has a teammate that is quite clearly worse than him. Never going to happen, because nobody is going to trust Norris to be their number one driver. If anyone is going to have Lando Norris at their team, whether it's McLaren or anyone else, they'll always partner him with a driver that's either better than him or on the same level as him, because Lando is not trustworthy to be that clear number one like Max is, or like Leclerc has been. Even you could say Russell is at the minute. That's just, again, Lando, that's just the way he is. He's just not that guy. And I said in a video I did on Lando Norris that came out during the winter break, I uploaded it, I think was it January? You can go check it out if you want. I said towards the end of that video, I think the very end of the video, will Lando be able to change? And I said no, because most of the things that he was failing with were things that at this point of his career, given how old he is, are now just set with him. He's not young enough to where he can, really make a lot of improvements. That's the one thing with Kimi Antonelli, where Antonelli lately and this season, you could say, has not had a good enough season. But Antonelli is 18 years old. He has a long way to go in terms of development, not just in terms of on-track skill. We're talking mentally as well, not just as a driver, but as a human being. So Antonelli has a long way to go development-wise. And once he does fully develop as a person and a driver, I think Antonelli is going to be a very special driver. But again, with Lando Norris, Lando's what, 20, 25, 26? Once you get to that age, you are who you are. You don't tend to really change at that point. So, yeah. Lando, maybe he wins the championship this year, we'll see, but I don't think Lando is championship material. I think he's pretty lucky to be in the Drivers' Championship battle, to be honest, given how he's performed this season. And I would be, if he doesn't win the championship this year, I'd be very surprised if he ever wins the championship, because again, I just don't think he's that guy. But before I read any more of your brilliant comments out, let me just quickly post a link to the stream out one final time before we get underway. Yeah, make sure to keep your comments coming, and I'll make sure to read them out. Come join us here. Watchalong qualifying in Hungary. There you go. Let me just scroll down a bit and see what you guys are saying. Rook's asking, who's Lando's manager, as Webber is to Piastri or Alonso to Borti, or is it all in-house at McLaren? I have no idea who. I have no idea who Lando's manager is. It must be in-house because Lando's been with McLaren for what, 10 plus years. Dom saying Arava and Quadrant will tell us Norris over Raikkonen. Have they actually said that? Because that is absolute nonsense if they have. Kimi Raikkonen did not have the career he had to be compared to Lando Norris. That is just ridiculous. Raikkonen, if prime Kimi Raikkonen from like 2005 was on the grid now, we would be saying he was one of the best, or probably the best, maybe not the best on the grid, but he'd be right there with Max, and we would be saying that Raikkonen was going to be like a 4 or 5 time champion. Again, prime Raikkonen is way better than whatever Lando Norris will be at his prime. You could say that Lando right now, this is prime Lando Norris. You could make that argument, but yeah, no way could you rate Norris over Raikkonen. Well, Condra may be a bit biased towards Norris, true, but I mean that is still even though they are biased, that is still a ridiculous comparison because it's, again, they're not even close. Paul James Squibbs asking, would you say that George Russell is the best British driver now? In terms of right now, yeah, Russell is the best British driver. I know Astro just said in the chat that Lewis Hamilton is the best, but Lewis is not in his prime anymore. He's past his prime. So, yeah, Russell, you'd have to say, is the best that this little island of ours has to offer. And I think he is going to be pretty comfortably the best British driver we have for quite a while, because he will always be better than Lando Norris. I've always thought Russell's better than Norris. I've always thought that since I watched them in Formula 2 in 2018. I've always been more of a Russell guy than a Norris guy. I mean, Oliver Behrman, obviously, we've got out there on the grid. He's only, 20 years old. Behrman, I think, is going to be a good driver, but I don't think he's going to be a truly elite driver like, Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc. I don't think he's ever going to be quite on that level. I think Behrman could get to the level of in terms of what we saw from, say, Carlos Sainz in the last couple of years. I think Behrman could get to that level, but I don't think the truly elite level. I don't think Behrman is. I don't think Behrman's got what it takes to be on that absolute elite level, unfortunately. And then, yeah, we'll see what other Brits we get in the future. KH saying Sainz really dropped off. Disappointing performance this year, yeah. Sainz has been positively terrible, I think, this year. Let me just scroll up a bit, see if I've missed any other good comments. Astro's saying, I think Cadillac will go with Bottas and Perez. Gather that's what they want. Personally, would go with Bottas and doing, or Bottas and Mick Schumacher, but doubt that'll happen. Well, yeah, make sure to check out my driver lineup prediction video because you'll be interested with the one I've gone with. Which again, it is a driver lineup prediction video with a twist. Not quite what you might be expecting. So yeah. But yeah, I think Valtteri Bottas very likely, yeah, will be a Cadillac driver next year. But his teammate, it could be quite a few drivers. Dom says Alex Dunn will replace Norris by 2029, whilst Norris heads for Aston. That's looking for quite far into the future, but yeah, it's not impossible. I mean, Alex Dunn is someone who's in the McLaren Academy. Alex Dunn is going to be a Formula One driver, 100%. He's got the talent, he's got the pace, he's got what it takes, 100%. He's going to be a Formula One driver. Maybe at some point he will be a McLaren driver, but depends on how Norris does, Piastri does. Oscar Piastri, I think, is more likely to leave McLaren than Lando Norris is, even if Piastri is performing better. I do think Piastri will race for Ferrari one day. I don't know why, I just really think that will happen at some point. Probably not till Leclerc leaves, but I really do think Piastri is going to be a Ferrari driver at some point, especially if Oscar wins the championship this year, because Ferrari do love hiring former world champions, no matter what, what their level is at whatever point. I mean, they went and rehired Kimi Raikkonen, back in, 2014, where it was, I think no one really thought of Raikkonen as a possibility for Ferrari at that time. But again, Ferrari love to have ex-world champions in their team. Alonso, Raikkonen, Vettel, Hamilton now. So, yeah, like I said, at some point, Oscar Piastri will be a Ferrari driver. It will happen. I'm very sure of it. But in terms of when it will happen, I think at least another few years until that does happen. In terms of Lando Norris, I could see Lando leaving McLaren, but I still think that's going to take, again, quite a few years to happen, because he's got a contract, I think, for the next, is it 3-4 years? And also, it's, his team in terms of, the relationship there. So, yeah, I think Piastri and Norris, I could see that being McLaren's lineup for the rest of the decade, to be honest. Astro asking, think Norris will retire soon next season or season after he doesn't improve? Young but struggling? No way. Absolutely no chance. Let me just see how old he is officially. He is 25, turns 26 in November. No, he will be on the grid for another 10 years at least, 100%. In terms of where he goes, though, again, I think he'll probably finish up the rest of this decade with McLaren. And then after that, we'll see. Depends on, obviously, how he performs. lots of discussion as to who the GOAT is in the chat. Loka gives their prediction for the top 10 for qualifying. Goes Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Hamilton, Hadjar 5th. That would be something. Verstappen 6th, and then Behrman, Alonso, Bortoletto, and Tsunoda. So no Mercedes cars in the top 10 for you. That is, quite the surprise. But not impossible. George Russell has missed Q3 in the last 2 years. I think last year he was 17th, and the year before he was like 18th or 19th. I know they were for reasons other than pace, but yeah, Russell has not had a good time lately around this circuit. Will F1 saying Raikkonen was great overall in 2012 and 13. Was one of the best drivers in those seasons. Absolutely, he was. I wouldn't say he was as good as Vettel or Alonso, but I think outside of those two, I think he was probably best of the rest in those 2 seasons. Which was incredible, because again, he took a 2-year break and then immediately came back in to a car that was, 3rd, 4th best, and was immediately operating at a title contending level. Astro asks, think Alex Dunn will get better than Norris? I think it's hard to say, honestly, because if you look at the F2 field that Alex Dunn has, it's not as good as it was when Lando was in F2 in 2018, where you had Norris, you had Russell, you had Albon, Nick De Vries obviously went on to win an F2 championship, I think, the following year. You had Latifi, who I know people like to meme about him, but in F2, Latifi was a pretty decent driver. Yeah, that F2 field in 2018 was very good. Probably, you could say, the best we've ever had in terms of quality. What do you call it? If you look at the current F2 field, Alex Dunn, yeah, is a very good driver. You got Arvid Lindblad, who's a driver that I know Red Bull are very excited about. I think Lindblad will be in Formula 1 at some point, probably next year, if Lawson doesn't get his act together, or if Tsunoda gets dropped or goes somewhere else. Lindblad, I think, will be on the grid. But other than Lindblad and Dunn, I'm not sure who else really is definitely gonna make the grid. So yeah, we'd have to wait and see as to will Alex Dunn be better than Lando Norris, and obviously see if Dunn comes into Formula 1 in the next year or two. We need to see what team will he enter with. It won't be McLaren, so be interesting to see who he starts out with. Anyway, what do you call it? We have got 15 minutes until qualifying begins at the Hungaroring, as we call it. I am going to have a quick pause on reading comments from the chat, because I just want to quickly go through the teams and do a quick roundup of how they should all be performing in this session. So, let's go into it. McLaren should lock out the front row. They've got clearly the best car, even more so than they did here last year, and they locked out the front row by a decent amount. McLaren are looking very good. In terms of who gets pole, it's going to be interesting. It will be very close between Piastri and Norris. I am leaning in the favour of Piastri, but again, it will be very close. Lando has always been very quick here at the Hungaroring, and always he's out-qualified Sainz here before. He's always in midfield cars. I remember he was very quick here. I think he was 4th here 3 years ago in a midfield car. So Lando cannot be doubted as to his speed at this circuit. But again, it will be very, very close between the two McLaren drivers, as it has been really for the last 2 years in qualifying around this track. For Red Bull and Verstappen, damage limitation, really. If Max can get on the third row of the grid at worst, then I think that would be, I wouldn't say good enough, but given the clear issues with the car, and given also that Ferrari and along with McLaren now are clearly quicker than Red Bull, that is probably where they should end up. So yeah, third row I think is what they're going to be aiming for. Obviously making the top 10 is not going to be the easiest for them either, given how slow they've looked this weekend and the difficulties they're having with the handling of the car, especially on the front end. We'll see how Yuki Tsunoda does. He's having a bit of a better time. He's a bit more confident with the car now. Now that he's got some newer parts on it. But Red Bull overall just don't look good. Ferrari should be comfortably the second best team. Leclerc, I think, will definitely end up in the top 3. Lewis Hamilton should end up not that far behind, and in terms of position, should end up in 4th place, really, in qualifying today. Because, I mean, it's one of his best, if not his best track, the Hungaroring. Hamilton's had pole position, I think, is it 9 times around this circuit? But yeah, even though he is past his prime, Hamilton, he is still quick enough to be right up there and not too far behind his much younger teammate. So yeah, Ferrari, I think a second row lockout is absolutely doable, and if they can get that, I think that pretty much secures that they will finish on the podium on Sunday, which realistically is the best result they can get from this Grand Prix weekend. Mercedes, I don't really have any confidence when it comes to them. They look clearly slower than McLaren and Ferrari, and I would say slower even than Aston Martin. I think in terms of over a qualifying lap, I just don't think they've got really that great a pace. They're not awful. I've seen them worse than this, Mercedes, before, but they are not whatsoever in the fight for a top 3 or a top 4 position on the grid. I think around the 4th row of the grid is where they're going to end up. And yeah, they're going to have to do a bit of suffering today. Tomorrow, they should be, if they do end up where I've predicted them to end up, which was 7th and 8th, they should do a bit better than tomorrow. But yeah, today is going to be a bit of a suffering for Mercedes. Hopefully, though, from Kimi Antonelli's perspective, he can actually get into Q3 and at least deliver the maximum potential of what he should be doing, which is probably 8th or better. As long as he does that, then I don't think you can have any complaints. He desperately does need some improved results because he hasn't had a points finish in quite a while. For Aston Martin, they are the team to look out for. They look incredibly quick around this circuit. Fernando Alonso, of course, you have to watch out for him as well because he's always been super quick. He's had 2 pole positions here in his career. Obviously, the weekend where he took his first ever win, he took pole here for Renault. And then another pole for Renault in 2009. But always in basically any car he's driven, he has always been quick here and right in the thick of it. So watch out for Fernando Alonso. I think he is the surprise of this session that we're going to have. And hopefully they can mix it and possibly get onto the 3rd row of the grid. Lance Stroll, I don't think will make the top 10 because, again, he always disappoints us in qualifying. But really, he should make the top 10 and should be, at worst, in... If Alonso is where I predicted him to be in 6th, Stroll should be, at worst, I would say 9th on the grid. Ultimately, though, we'll see where they end up, but definitely they are looking strong and looking like they're mixing it, definitely with Red Bull and Mercedes this weekend, at least in qualifying trim. Alpine, sadly, got one of the worst cars. Haas, keep an eye out for them. Oliver Behrman is looking very quick in that car. Ocon also is looking decent. So, yeah, they should be having a decent qualifying today, and they definitely can make the top 10. It depends, though, on how others perform. If both Aston Martins, for example, make the top 10, I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to get into the top 10, given that I think Racing Bulls are also a decent amount quicker than them in quali trim. But it is absolutely possible for Haas to get into the top 10 here in qualifying. Racing Bulls, keep an eye out on them, and Isaac Hadjar has looked very quick this weekend. And we know the Racing Bulls car consistently is always very quick through the corners. So, yeah, Hadjar, keep your eye on him. Liam Lawson hopefully will improve quite a bit on what he's done in practice so far and get into the action. But, yeah, keep your eye on the Racing Bull. Williams, I'm pretty sure I've got one of, at best, the slowest cars this weekend, but maybe even the slowest car. They will do well to get their cars into Q2. And for Sauber, keep your eye on them as well. Hulkenberg has looked decent this weekend, and Bortoletto was looking a lot better in practice 3. They might be able to cause a real surprise in this session, so keep your eyes on Sauber. But here is my top 10 prediction for qualifying. McLaren, I think, will look out the front row. Piastri, I'm going on pole. Norris 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Verstappen 5th, Alonso 6th. And then Russell 7th, Antonelli 8th, Hadjar 9th, and Oliver Behrman, I think, will make the top 10 just about ahead of Stroll and his teammate and Hulkenberg and drivers like that, and also Tsunoda being another one. But that's my prediction, guys. Let me know yours in the chat. We have only got, I think, 7 minutes to go until qualifying is underway in Budapest. There you go. Perhaps I'm saying I wonder if Norris will crack under pressure. He's normally a bit better at not cracking under pressure in qualifying, but he has done it before this season in qualifying. We've seen that quite a few times, actually. By the way, before we get into it, make sure to smash a like button. Let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can. And make sure as well to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As, yeah, we are just a few minutes away. And I'm going to read out probably 2 more comments. And then we will get into this session. Bravamore says, I'm worried for Kimi. Yeah, I've been a bit worried for him as of late, but, again, given that he's 18 and the talent's clearly there, I think he just needs to be given time, to be honest. Not everyone can be Max Verstappen in their debut season or Lewis Hamilton. Akobia says that Hamilton just got in. I don't think he's leaving. That's in response to someone else asking who will replace Hamilton at Ferrari. Illuminati asking, will we be live tomorrow? No, unfortunately not. And again, the reason that is because I'm expecting tomorrow's race to be a very boring one. So, yeah, that's why I will not be live tomorrow. And that's why I'm live today. But what is the most exciting part, usually, and most important part of a Hungarian Grand Prix weekend? The fight for pole. As the F1 intro is now playing. And that's time for us to get into a final couple details before qualifying gets underway. We'll start with the championship standings. Oscar Piastri comes into this weekend 16 points clear of Lando Norris. Max Verstappen pretty much out of the championship fight now, about 80 points behind in third. Russell 4th, Leclerc 5th, Lewis Hamilton 30 points behind his teammate in 6th, Antonelli in 7th, Alex Albon less than 10 points behind in 8th, Nico Hülkenberg 9th for Sauber, and Esteban Ocon 10th in the Haas. On the constructor side, McLaren are so far clear of the rest of the field. Ferrari, though, in 2nd, starting to pull away to a degree compared to Mercedes and Red Bull. Mercedes in 3rd, Red Bull in 4th. Williams still comfortably in 5th, nearly 30 points clear of the next team being Sauber, who are doing very well this season. Only 2 points clear, though, of Racing Bulls, who need a big weekend if they to get back up to 6th before the summer break. Aston Martin, who are looking good here, are in 8th in the championship, only 1 point clear of Haas. Meanwhile, Alpine, who are not looking good here, are also not looking good in the championship. They are bottom of the championship standings and 15 points away from the next best team. But let's get into some key stats for the front-running teams regarding qualifying here in Hungary that you guys need to know of. McLaren, their last pole position in Hungary was obviously last year with Lando Norris. They also locked out the front row at last year's Grand Prix. They've only taken pole, though, in Hungary twice in the last 15 years. That other pole, it was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton. And yeah, last year, front row lockout, and McLaren surely are heading for that today. Red Bull, their last pole position, funnily, was 6 years ago with Max Verstappen, and that was actually Max's first ever pole position. I remember doing a stream back then for that, and yeah, that was, or feels like an age ago. It feels about 10 years ago, to be honest. Red Bull, that is their only pole in Hungary in the last 10 years, and you'd have to go back to 2011 for the last pole before that one from Verstappen in 2019 here at the Hungaroring. Last year, it was 3rd and 16th in qualifying. 3rd on the grid would be incredibly high for this Red Bull today. Ferrari's last pole in Hungary was 8 years ago with Sebastian Vettel. That weekend, they locked out the front row, and that is their only pole in Hungary since in the last 10 years. And actually, before that 2017 pole, you'd have to go back to the year 2005 for the last pole in Hungary before 2017. So that was 20 years ago with Michael Schumacher. And Ferrari last year, 4th and 6th on the grid, which wasn't too bad, but this year could go a slight bit better. And for Mercedes, their last pole in Hungary was 2 years ago with Lewis Hamilton, and they've been clearly the most successful team at this track in qualifying in the last 10 years. 6 poles in the last 10 years. And last year, 5th and 17th it was in qualifying. Not too great, but they did obviously end up with a podium in the end. And here we go. Qualifying less than a minute away. The clouds have come over the track, the Hungaroring track, and that is because of rain, which is not going to hit the track. It's rain that is just passing by. And looking at the radar, yeah, the rain looks like it's just going to pass by. There might be a couple very small showers, but that hit the track. But yeah, the real majority, let's say, of the rain looks like it's going to pass the circuit, so it should remain dry. And there you go. Qualifying is underway in Budapest. And we have got 18 minutes, obviously, of Q1. And we'll be knocking out the 5 slowest cars, whoever the 5 slowest are, at the end of this Q1 session. And then, of course, in Q2. We'll be knocking out the next 5 slowest at the end of the 15-minute Q2 session, and then the final top 10 shootout in Q3, of course, is 12 minutes long. As no cars coming out onto track just yet, so clearly the teams are confident that there is not going to be a shower, because if they thought there was going to be, they'd all be out there right now pounding round to make sure they got a lap in. But yeah, it has clouded over quite a bit, and like I said, it's because of a rain shower passing close by, but should not hit the circuit. As we're looking at Isaac Hadjar and the Racing Bulls garage. Hadjar, of course, wants to keep an eye out on today. And also, in qualifying this year, if you look at the midfield battle, Hadjar has been very consistent in making the top 10, and I wouldn't say winning the midfield fight every time, but has always been right in there. As we do have a car on track, and it is Alex Albon in the Williams. Albon, I don't think, has scored a point here in Hungary ever for Williams. The last points finish he had here, I think, was for Red Bull in 2020, which would have been a 5th place finish, I think it was, in that 2020 race. And the reason he's not scored points there, I don't believe, for Williams, is because Williams are never quick here. They always turn up here and are always quite far off the pace, because they either just don't have enough downforce or don't build their cars to be quick around a track like this. As a lot of other cars staying in the pits. Of course, this is not a circuit where you will want to do 2 laps on the same tyre, because the tyres get such a pounding around this track, as Albon locks up the inside front quite big time into the first corner. And that's a horrible start for his lap. Would have lost himself probably a second. So Albon already at a difficult start here, as... Or was that Carlos Sainz? I think no, that was actually Carlos Sainz who did that lockup, as both Williamses on track on flying laps. Now we've got both Red Bulls on track, but they're on out laps currently. But yeah, Williams probably will get at least one car eliminated here in this Q1. In Q1, though, the best lap time I'm expecting up front is probably between a 1:15.3 and a 1:15.6 to be the best lap time in this session. So to get through to Q2, you're going to have to do probably a low 1:16 at the slowest. Say a 1:16.2, maybe a 1:16.3 to be able to get through. And Alex Albon is just at a 1:17.4, which is, yeah, quite far off what he will need if he wants to get through. So, yeah. A 1:16.2 or a 1:16.3, I think, is what will be the slowest time that probably gets through to Q2. As that's a replay of Sainz with his lockup. Sainz, again, would have lost probably about a second from that mistake, and he ended up 8/10 behind his teammates, so definitely could have gone quicker had it not been for that, as we've got quite a few other cars now out on the circuit. As here is Max Verstappen, your world champion. Hasn't had pole here for 6 years, but he has won this race, I think, twice before. in 2022 and 2023. 2023 won this race by over half a minute. Obviously in the Red Bull car that was all dominant that year. But 2 years later, it couldn't be any different for Red Bull. As first sector completed, that's going to be the best sector, unfortunately, for Red Bull around this track. Only gets worse as a lap goes on for them. As Lando Norris is on his first flying lap. As Verstappen flies through turn 11, which is not quite flat out. It was in those 2020 cars, but not with these. As this is actually a good start for Max. This lap going to be what, 1:16.2 probably, 1:16.1 maybe at best. Here he comes across the line. And it's a 1:16.3. So yeah, that's a good start from Max. Nothing, special, but a good start, and also a good start for Tsunoda, who only goes a couple tenths of a second slower than his teammate. Here comes Lando Norris, as Oscar Piastri's been very quick on this lap. He'll complete his lap in a moment, as Lando Norris goes quickest to a 1:15.9, which is a good start for him. But Oscar Piastri looks like he's going to go even quicker. And the championship leader does a 1:15.5. What a start that is. And Piastri, that's a good enough lap to the point where, well, he doesn't need to do another lap in this session. As Ocon goes 5th with a decent first run. As Lewis Hamilton 3rd at a 1:15.9. That's a very good start from Hamilton. 4 tenths quicker than Verstappen on that first lap. And Piastri actually dipped a wheel in the gravel on the exit of turn 12. So could have gone another probably 10th, maybe 2 tenths at most quicker. So yeah, scary pace from Piastri already to start this session. As Alonso pops up to 4th, Lance Stroll goes 5th. So a good start there for Aston Martin. As Leclerc, interestingly, only 6th. And quarter of a second slower than his teammate, as Antonelli has done a purple first sector, which doesn't really mean anything around this circuit. As Isaac Hadjar, good start for him, up to P5, splitting the Aston Martins. As Lawson goes 9th. And then you've got Behrman just ahead of his teammate. As here comes Antonelli, who goes 2nd. What a lap from Antonelli. That's a great start from him. Here comes George Russell. And he goes 2nd, only slightly slower than Piastri. That's a very, very strong start from Mercedes. That's, yeah, a lot quicker than I was expecting them to be in this session. I know it's only Q1, but yeah. That's very, very strong start from Mercedes-Benz. So 2nd and 3rd. I mean, Piastri, again, we know could have gone probably a 10th or so quicker, but Mercedes currently splitting the McLarens. As Carlos Sainz does a 1:16.4, which is obviously a lot better, but still don't think that's enough for what he'll probably need later. Colapinto, by the way, has just gone up to P10. As Alex Albon now does, I think, 16.4. Yeah, Williams trying their best, but still not very quick from them. So yeah, Colapinto up in 10th. And then you've got Hulkenberg 11th. Bortoletto 12th. And then Verstappen 13th, Lawson 14th, Albon now 15th, Sainz in 16th, and then Tsunoda, Behrman, Gasly, Ocon. Here's a replay of Hulkenberg at turn 12, presumably running slightly wide. Yeah, would have cost him probably half a tenth. Yeah, so far, as we've got 7 minutes to go in Q1, the most interesting part of qualifying so far is, the pace of Mercedes. That has come out of absolutely nowhere. Can they keep it up? I hope they can, because it's been disappointing since they're winning Canada to see them off the pace. They've, they started the year so well, so many podiums, and looked so good. But since then, it's been very difficult. But maybe going back to their old suspension may prove to work. But we'll see how things play out. As the two Williamses coming in and out to the garage to get refueled, retired. Retired as in new tyres on. As that's Alonso. Filtering onto the circuit, Alonso currently in 6th. Alonso already has done a good enough lap to get through to Q2, so that's not a concern. And not really for both Aston Martins. Look like both Aston Martins look like they've done enough to get through. But yeah, Albon 16.4 is the quickest driver not in the drop zone. But as I said, a 16.2 or a 16.3 is I think the worst lap time you'll need to do to get through. So if Albon wants to get through, he's going to have to do another couple tenths of a second of improvement at least to make his way through. Brabham saying, want to hear my tin foil hat conspiracy Chaz's Rooks, but it would be very impressive if I was. But no, I am not. As here is Lance Stroll, who the commentators were hyping up how good he is around this track. Really, he's not bad around this track, Stroll, but he's not as good around this track as people make out he is. He was really good here in 2020, but that was 5 years ago. Kimi Raikkonen was still on the grid, for God's sake. As Stroll does a purple first sector. And yeah, the front end of this Aston Martin looks very good. It's weird with this Aston Martin car. Obviously, since, I think, was it Imola? Since that Grand Prix, they've been a lot better. And some Grand Prix, they're really quick in qualifying. But then some weekends, they're just absolutely nowhere. For example, last week at Spa, absolutely nowhere. But now suddenly here, they look like they look even quicker now around this track than they were here 2 years ago when they had fundamentally a better car. It's a very weird car, this Aston Martin. As Alonso, 2 purple sectors. As Stroll goes 3rd. Alonso looks like he's going to go quickest with this lap if he keeps it up in the final sector. Throws it into the final corner. Can Alonso go to the top of the timesheets? Yes, he does by nearly or 0.3 of a second. What a lap from Fernando Alonso. A 1:15.2. That is a statement from Aston Martin as to how quick they are. And we'll see what the others can do to respond to that. That is a stunning lap time from Alonso. As Esteban Ocon is very slowly coming out of the pits. I don't know if that's because he has an issue or if he's just trying to back off to give himself the most amount of gap in front of him. Now we're looking at Max Verstappen. Can he get anywhere near what Alonso just did there? Bit of a twitch through turn 1, but okay enough. Now into turn 2. Bit of an awkward corner. And Max nearly 2/10 off in the first sector, as Piastri is on a much better lap. 2 purple sectors. Piastri is about to smash. The Alonso fans rejoicing around the world briefly at their man who's at the top of the timesheets. As Piastri comes to the line and only goes 700ths of a second quicker, but still quickest at 1:15.211. But yeah, as Lando Norris, third. Still, that pace from Aston Martin, very, very impressive. They are looking right in the fight here. Not for pole, but for the positions outside of that, absolutely. As Max Verstappen improves up to 6th place, which is, well, compared to the others, not great. As Yuki Tsunoda comes out the drop zone and goes up to 8th. That should be good enough for Tsunoda to get out, as Isaac Hadjar goes 3rd, quicker than Lando Norris. What a lap from the young Frenchman. As here is Bortoleto, the F2 champion of last year, goes 5th. As we're now looking at Carlos Sainz, can he get out of the drop zone? He does. What an improvement at 1:15.6. And he's up to 7th place. That's an incredible improvement by Sainz. Here comes Pierre Gasly. Goes 13th. And yeah, the pace of these cars is way quicker than I was expecting. I thought it'd be a low 1:16 at worst to get through. But Colapinto is on a 1:16.2, and he's now climbed himself out the drop zone, as now Leclerc is in the drop zone. As Alex Albon has just gone 17th, but he is out, Albon, of qualifying. That's both Leclerc and Hamilton. Now the checkered flag has fallen. Both Leclerc and Hamilton on final laps, as Ocon up to 15th. I don't think that's going to be good enough, though, to get him through. Behrman goes 10th. That will be good enough. What a lap by Behrman. As Leclerc on a not the greatest lap, but still surely good enough. As Lewis Hamilton to the line goes 9th. Hamilton is through. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc goes 5th. And Liam Lawson, what can he do? He goes 14th and pushes Yuki Tsunoda, his ex-teammate, out in Q1. I really thought Tsunoda had done a good enough job to get through, but no. Tsunoda is out in Q1 by what? 400ths, or is it 200ths of a second. Incredible. That was an incredibly close Q1. The top 20 separated by a second. The top 19 separated by 8/10. An incredible Q1 that was. But let's go through the drivers that have made it through to Q2. Piastri, Alonso, Hadjar, Norris, Leclerc, Bortoleto, Russell, Sainz, Stroll, Hamilton, Verstappen, Behrman, Antonelli, Lawson, and Colapinto. Congrats to him. Doesn't always make it through to Q2. And knocked out in Q1, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, and Alexander Albon. And yet again, guys, despite having a great season, especially in the races, Nico Hülkenberg has been out-qualified yet again. by Gabriele Bortoleto, who continues to show that he really is a very good driver. But yeah, Hulkenberg should be disappointed with that. That Sauber is definitely quite a bit quicker than 19th. Ocon as well should be disappointed. He definitely should have been getting his way through to Q2. Obviously, Tsunoda should be very disappointed, and so should Gasly, being out-qualified by his teammate Colapinto. That is very disappointing. But the pace in that session was quite a bit hot, or hotter, than I expected. So, for pole position later, probably going to have to readjust what I think the pole position time is going to be. But, yeah, that was a very hot and wild Q1. Let's get ready for Q2. And of course, at the end of the 15 minutes of Q2, we'll knock out the next 5 slowest cars. And when Q2 gets underway, I will sync up the timer at the 14-minute mark. And yeah, Leclerc able to get through in the end. The only top, if you exclude Tsunoda, the only top team runner that got close to being eliminated was Antonelli, who, interestingly, Mercedes did not do a second run. So keep your eye on Mercedes, because they were very quick in that first run in Q1, but then they did not go for the second run. So yeah, I think the biggest headlines of that session, Aston Martin looking incredibly quick, and Mercedes as well in that first run looked very, very good. So we'll see if that can be maintained for the rest of the session. Especially, I really hope it can for Aston Martin. How great would that be? See Alonso in the top 3, top 4 would be fantastic, quite frankly. But for Q2, as a race control just said, Q2 will be underway in about 4 minutes from now. Colapinto surely will get eliminated. Bortoleto probably as well. And probably Lawson, I'd add to that, most likely. But after that, I think it's really up for grabs. Even, you could say, for Bortoleto to get into the top 10. Astro saying Tsunoda would have done better in the junior car. Again, sigh. Yeah. Yeah, Astro saying was not expecting that last row, Hulkenberg and Albon. Yeah, I think it was either you or someone else predicted both Hulkenberg and Albon to make the top 10. But no. 19th and 20th is where they shall be. But for Hulkenberg, that's a bit of a good omen. He was 19th on the grid at Silverstone, and he obviously finished 3rd. Brabham just saying that Oscar did a 15.2 on used softs. I did wonder whether McLaren were on used tyres, because they weren't as quick in that session as we were probably not hoping, but expecting. So yeah, good information there. Thank you for that, Brabham. McLaren still obviously the clear favourites here. But in terms of the pole position time, I think we're looking at a low 1 minute 14 for pole position. As they're showing the radar again. Yeah, a lot of rain passing to the side of the track, but again, doesn't look like we're going to have any actual rain hitting the track. And if we do, it will be a very small shower. But, what do you call it? Yeah, a low 1:14 looks like it's going to be the pole position time. But in terms of this session, Q2, the best time in Q2, I think, is probably going to be I don't know, probably a 1:14.6, 1:14.7. So if you can do probably a mid 1:15 or better, I think that should be good enough to get through to um should be good enough to get through to Q3. And when I say a mid 1:15, I'm talking 15.4, maybe at worst a 15.5, which is what, 2-3 tenths slower than Alonso went in Q1. So Alonso should definitely be making the top 10. Isaac Hadjar, I think, did a 1:15.5 in Q1. So yeah, Hadjar and the Racing Bulls looking very good. Dom says Giovinazzi used to outqualify Kimi a lot, by the way. He did. But unfortunately, Giovinazzi, a lot of the time, didn't have a good enough car to show, I think, his true quality. I do think Giovinazzi was someone who got the bit of the rough end of the stick in Formula One. I think if him and Kimi had a car during their time together that was consistently able to be in the top 10, like the AlphaTauri was during that time, I think Giovinazzi would probably still be on the grid to this day. As yeah, session has begun. We're about 30 seconds in. Good to see, by the way, that Giovinazzi's having a good time in WEC with, obviously, the Ferrari team. Having the career that he deserves, as Antonelli is, I think, the first car out there on the circuit. Yeah, very curious to see what Mercedes do in this session. And there you go, 14 minutes remaining Q2. One thing I will say is if you do a 1 minute 14 lap time or a low 1:15, I think definitely you get through to Q3. So in terms of these first laps, let's see who does what. As all people in the crowd getting their hoods on. Again, it should only be a small shower if it does hit, but it could be large enough in terms of affecting certain people's laps that really could hurt their qualifying efforts, as Antonelli is just coming through the final corner and now starts his lap. Can Mercedes keep up the impressive pace of Q1? Into turn 1 he comes. Mercedes looked very good through there. Now through turn 2. And yeah, the Mercedes looking very good through the laps so far, even though they've only gone through really couple real corners. As up to the turn 7 and 8 chicane it is. Russell has gone quicker in the first sector than Antonelli, which is not a surprise. Russell is normally the quicker driver. Remember as well, if Mercedes are looking good today, George Russell has had pole position here before, so keep your eyes on Russell, of course. It's Saturday. You must always keep your eyes peeled on Mr. Saturday. And Antonelli dipped a wheel in the gravel there. As Max being told expect best conditions end of session, which, yeah, no shit. That's always the case, dry or even in these conditions. As Antonelli comes to the line and does a 1:16.3, which is quite slow. But is that because of the conditions, or is that because of used tyres? Russell does a 1:16.0. That could be because of used tyres. Stroll does a 1:15.6. Yeah, I think Mercedes have done a lap there on used tyres. As Alonso, a 1:15.3 goes quickest. So Alonso already looking good. As Behrman does a 1:15.9, which is in terms of getting through to Q3, okay. Bortoletto goes up ahead of Antonelli on a 16.3. Lawson does a 16.1. As we're looking at Lando Norris is just on a purple first sector. Hadjar up to third. As Lando Norris flies now through turn 9. Flat through 10. Almost flat through 11. And yeah, Lando might just dip into the 1:14s with this lap if he has a really good final sector. As Max Verstappen has only gone 6th. 7/10 Max is slower than Alonso. Incredible. Lando to the line. And he does a 1:14.8. That is a very good lap for the first lap in Q2, especially given these conditions. As Carlos Sainz has just gone 9th. Lewis Hamilton only goes 9th. Surely on used tyres, Ferrari there. Piastri goes 2nd, only half a tenth slower than his teammates. So both McLarens looking as expected. Super quick. As Leclerc only goes 10th. So yeah, Ferrari definitely on used tyres, just like Mercedes. And I hope, and I think most probable, Max as well on used tyres. McLaren, I think, are on new tyres with those laps. So, those are the first runs of Q2 done with just under 9 minutes in Q2 to go. And currently on their way to Q3, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Isaac Hadjar, Oliver Behrman, George Russell, Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson, and Charles Leclerc. As just showing a replay of Colapinto losing the rear end quite a bit at turn 9. He went to get on the power, but the car said no. So in the drop zone, it's Lewis Hamilton in 11th, Sainz 12th, Bortoletto 13th, Antonelli 14th, and Colapinto aborted that lap, I think. But yeah, both Mercedes, both Ferraris, and Max in the Red Bull definitely were on used tyres. Even though I don't know that for sure, I am very confident of that, given the lap times they have just done. So, much improvement to come. Aston Martin, though, still looking very good. But, yeah, they're all now being wheeled back in. And as long as there's no yellow or red flags at the wrong time, then both Mercedes, both Ferraris, and Max should still comfortably make it through here to Q3. So, as Lance Stroll is already back out there on the track. Again, remember I said what 1:15.4, 1:15.5 would be the slowest time you'd need to do to get through. Currently, Lance Stroll in fourth is on a 1:15.5. So basically, everyone from Stroll down needs to improve if they want to get through. Alonso, I think, is probably just about okay. He will go out again, obviously, to improve to make sure, but I think he is just about okay there, Alonso. But yeah, everyone from Stroll down needs to improve if they want to get through. Both McLarens are fine out front. We'll see if they come out again. They don't need to. McLaren are going to make it through, no doubt. As here is the Canadian Lance Stroll. Let's see if he can secure his first Q3 appearance for, what would it be? Probably since that race at Imola, where I'm pretty sure he was 7th on the grid or 8th on the grid that weekend. And Aston Martin, this is, as a team, the strongest they have looked in quite a while. Stroll, we've not seen what his first sector time is. But first sector is not that important. It's the middle and final sector which makes the lap here. Stroll coming up to the middle sector. And yeah, still not seeing any sector time, so I can't tell you if Stroll's on a really good lap or not. But at the minute, the position Aston Martin are in, this is what they will be hoping they'll be this time next year. Well, not quite, but, you know, at worst, they'll be hoping to be in this position. As Stroll goes up to third on a 1:15.1. So he improved by 4/10, and that is definitely good enough for Stroll to get into Q3. So Lance Stroll has done the job. So should be both Aston Martins in Q3, which is massive for them in the championship. As we've got a whole bundle of cars trying to get their way out, as the Williams there of Sainz is really being stupid. He keeps trying to poke himself out into the pit lane, but he's made it dangerous for the cars in the fast lane. Stupid there from Sainz. But yes, Sainz is Williams' only hope. Sainz, though, doing well at the minute in 12th. That would be a very good result, considering Williams are not really quick enough to be in that position. As we look at Charles Leclerc, who is in the top 10 despite having done a lap on used tyres. And Leclerc, as long as he has a clean lap, this should easily get him through to the top 10 shootout. He's the lap time he's on currently is, I think, 1:16.1, so he just needs to improve by what, 7 or 8 tenths probably, at least, and he should be fine to get through. As he started his lap, so has Lewis Hamilton, who of course is the most successful driver around this circuit, I'm pretty sure. As Leclerc only half a tenth off Norris after the first sector. As snap of oversteer on the exit of turn 5. As Lewis Hamilton has had a good enough, let's say, first sector. As Leclerc through turn 11 3/10 off Norris after the first two sectors. So this is going to put Leclerc probably in 4th place, behind Stroll, interestingly. And the reason that's interesting is because Stroll did his lap, a few minutes ago when the track should have been in worse condition. So Aston Martin still looking very good. And Leclerc actually goes behind both Aston Martins. So yeah, Aston Martin genuinely are looking supremely quick here. Lewis Hamilton, only 7th on a 1:15.7. I think Hamilton's in trouble there. That is not a good enough lap. As Lawson goes ahead of him. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton is in big trouble. Big, big trouble. He's in 8th place. But we've still got the 2 Mercedes and Max Verstappen out there. As Hadjar up to 6th. Hamilton now down to 9th. Hamilton's going to get eliminated here if he's not careful. There's nothing he can do about it, though. As Antonelli goes 8th. Pushing Hamilton into 10th. And Hamilton, he's going to get eliminated. As George Russell comes to the line and goes 4th. And Lewis Hamilton is out in Q2. What an absolutely horror show performance as Max Verstappen goes 8th and makes it through, I think, as Bortoleto goes 10th and knocks out Antonelli. Incredible lap by Bortoleto, who only just pops himself ahead of the Mercedes. Piastri does another lap but stays in 2nd. Here's Colapinto. Can he do anything in 15th? He goes 14th, but Carlos Sainz behind him is probably going to go even quicker. Can Sainz get into Q3 somehow? No, he stays in 14th, but there you go. Lewis Hamilton out in Q2, along with Antonelli in the Mercedes. A Mercedes and a Ferrari out in Q2. Wow, not expected whatsoever, especially for Lewis Hamilton. Only 13th. That was an absolutely horror lap. I said you needed to do a mid 1:15 if you wanted to get through. Leclerc did. Leclerc did a 1:15.4. Hamilton did a 1:15.7. And Lewis is on the radio every time. So, Q2 is done with. Let's go through your drivers that are on the way to the top 10 shootout. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, Isaac Hadjar, Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson and Gabriel Bortoleto, who makes Q3 for the 3rd time in 4 races. And knocked out in Q2, Kimi Antonelli, Oliver Behrman, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and Franco Colapinto. And yeah, Hamilton and Antonelli nowhere near good enough, I'm afraid, those laps. They were both a couple tenths shy of really the lap times they should have been doing. And that is what has cost them. They just didn't do what the clear potential was in those cars. But what this does mean is, so obviously we've got Red Bull out in Sonoda, Hamilton's out in the Ferrari, Antonelli's out in the Mercedes. A lot of opportunity now for the midfield teams because you've only got 2 McLarens, a Mercedes, a Ferrari, and a Red Bull. So from 6th down, again, a lot of opportunity. But looking at what we've had so far, Aston Martin look like they could be the closest team to McLaren in this session. So we could have Aston Martin on the 2nd row of the grid because Ferrari have not looked that impressive so far. Mercedes with Russell are looking still quite a bit better than I expected. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, still struggling. Even though he did make it through to the top 10, he was still slower than Hadjar and the Racing Bulls. So yeah, Aston Martin, what a surprise, especially after the last Grand Prix. Last weekend, they literally had by far the slowest car. Now they are within half a second of McLaren and look like they might be the second best team for qualifying. It's going to be close between them, Mercedes, Ferrari. I don't think Max and the Red Bull is quite in that fight, but yeah, Aston Martin, you've got to say they are legitimately quick enough to be on the second row of the grid. And I've just been notified Antonelli had his time deleted for a track limit violation. So even worse, Antonelli 15th, Behrman 11th. He loves that position. Behrman has finished 11th, I think, the last 4 F1 races. And apparently, if Behrman finishes 11th tomorrow, will break a Guinness World Record for most finishes in the same position in a row that isn't in first. So, please, can Behrman finish 10th? As Bortoleto was just saying, celebrating on the radio, finishing, getting in the top 10. Another great job by Bortoleto, who continues to raise his stock in Formula One. And Audi, for next year, I'm telling you, they'll be very happy that they have got Bortoleto in their car. Because not only do I rate him, but you can tell quite a few drivers on the grid rate him as well. Max, Fernando. So, yeah, he's definitely a driver of the future to look out for. As just watching Anthony Davidson doing some SkyPad analysis. But, yeah, so one better there for Hamilton. He'll be 12th on the grid tomorrow. But, yeah, no chance of a podium from there. Be interesting, though, to watch him come through. But, yeah, looks like it's going to be quite a bit more mixed up of a grid behind the two McLarens than we expected. So, yeah, they're just showing highlights of Antonelli's lap, which was scruffy to say the least. Him really throwing the car around and being very aggressive. Probably a tad too aggressive. But make sure, by the way, to keep voting in that poll in the chat, because I will finish up the results in that poll in a moment. But also, before we get to Q3, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, because we do quality and race watch-alongs for almost every Grand Prix. And also, make sure to smash the like button, as we are on 49 likes. So let's obviously try and get up to 50 plus if we can. So yeah, if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. As Lewis Hamilton, helmet on, as he's walked back to the garage and, well, to the paddock area, so clearly miserable. And I think that's got to be, except for that weekend where his engine blew up, I think 2014 that's got to be the worst qualifying result he's ever had at this track. So yeah, if you need any more evidence, I'm afraid, and I don't say it with pleasure, but if you need any more evidence that Lewis Hamilton is past his best and is no longer the Lewis Hamilton of before, there you had it. Your clear evidence was right there. But Q3 is underway, and we have 12 minutes of qualifying to go as the cars now coming out to track, I think, to get ahead of any possible rain. Astra saying set the race up nicely with the mixed grid here, not too late to change your mind. I still think it's going to be a boring race because, again, you can't overtake around here, even with these cars. And these cars are even worse for overtaking, it feels like, than the old cars we had in 2020, 2021. Anyway, let me quickly finish up the poll results. I asked you guys earlier who will take pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix. 856 votes. Thank you very much for voting if you have. And 35% of the vote has gone to the World Championship leader, Oscar Piastri. 29% for Norris, 17% for Leclerc, and 16% for Verstappen. Let's find out of the two McLaren drivers, who will take pole position. Norris had pole here last year. Can Piastri take his first ever pole at the Hungaroring? Again, pole position, it should be a low 1 minute 14. I'm thinking of 1:14.2, 1:14.3 for pole position. So if anyone can do a mid 1:14 with this lap, at least a 1:14 that isn't a McLaren, then that is a really great lap that sets them up for possibly something amazing. As in the qualifying head-to-head, they're just showing on screen. Piastri only just ahead, 7-6. It's been very close in qualifying, but in the race, Piastri has clearly been the better driver this season. As we look at Lando Norris just coming through turn 11. Given the tyres an easy time, of course, you have to really baby the tyres on the outlap here. But in these final couple corners is where you've got to fire them up. As, Lance Stroll on a flying lap, really giving it some out of the chicane just after the middle sector. As Alonso has done a purple first sector. Of course, the two Aston Martins are the first two to start a lap here. What can they do? Can Aston Martin somehow get onto the second row of the grid here in Hungary? Let's find out. The last time they were on the second row of the grid here was back when they were Racing Point in 2020, where they locked out the second row with Stroll and Perez. Lance Stroll, 1:16.6. That is an awful lap time. That's, nowhere near good enough. Here comes Alonso. What can he do for his first run? A 1:16.0. So, well, either the track is massively slowed down, or more likely, the Aston Martins have gone out on used tyres. As Lawson splits the Aston Martins, Norris half a second up on Alonso as Leclerc only goes second. As the McLaren's looking incredibly quick out here. As Norris understeers wide at the final corner. Goes quickest on a 1:15.5. These lap times are quite a bit slower than what we were expecting. Remember, the best time in Q2 was a 1:14.8. Can Piastri go quickest? Yes, he does, by a tenth of a second. Oscar Piastri on provisional pole. But George Russell has done a purple middle sector along with a purple first sector. Can he somehow drag this silver arrow onto provisional pole? He's done it before. And round the final corner. No, he loses it all in the final sector, but still a great lap. First lap here in Q3. George Russell goes third. Quarter of a second off the pace of the McLarens. What a lap from Russell. As Max understeers like a trolley through the final corner and goes fifth behind Alonso. As Stroll had his time deleted. Bortoletto 8, so Stroll and Hadjar haven't done a lap time. Hadjar is still in the pits. Piastri quickest on a 1:15.398, about a tenth quicker than Norris. And then Russell quarter of a second back. Again, I am assuming that they are on used tyres, these teams, because That is my only explanation for why the lap times have dropped off so much. Either that, or we have had some rain hit the track in between Q2 and Q3, which has slowed the track down. But yeah, everyone now coming back in to get refueled, new tyres on, and we will see how it will all shake out. As currently, with just over 5.5 minutes to go, McLaren are on the front row. Piastri on provisional pole with Norris second, Russell third. Quite far ahead of Alonso in fourth. If Alonso can hang on to that, he'll be very happy with that, and so will the team. Max Verstappen fifth, Leclerc sixth, Lawson seventh, Bortoleto eighth, Stroll ninth, and Hadjar 10th. Stroll and Hadjar, though, in 9th and 10th, have not done a lap time. Lance Stroll, though, is back out there. Let's see what Stroll can do and what Alonso can do, as they both are out there for the final time in qualifying. Aston Martin going early, get their laps in before the big rush at the end. And hopefully the two drivers can get the maximum out of their laps, because this car looks very good. As Max Verstappen saying on the radio, mate, already on the outlap, I just have, again, no grip. It's like driving on ice. So tyre warm-up issue there. Something maybe the team can help with. As Verstappen looks like he's going to be released soon. As Leclerc and Norris looks like they're going to be released in a few seconds. Lando, I wouldn't say bottled it on that lap, but through the final corner definitely picked up a lot of understeer, which would have cost him not maybe the entirety of the gap he is behind Piastri, but quite a bit of it. But there is still one more lap to go to correct things for everyone, as Stroll begins his lap well, slightly quicker than Piastri on through the first sector, now into the middle sector. And in turn 11, Stroll only a tenth and a half down on Piastri. This lap might put Stroll ahead of his teammate, who is also out there on a lap. Let's see. Through the final sector, the Canadian comes. Can he put this Aston Martin in a strong position? To the line he comes. Third. What a lap from Stroll. Purple final sector, nearly a tenth off pole. Can Alonso somehow get himself up there or go even quicker? Into the final sector he is. Now into the final corner. He gets the apex in nicely. To the line. Second, Alonso on the front row as it stands. And the Alonso fans scream in delight. Second and fourth currently. Will it remain that way? Surely not. As we've got both McLarens and the Mercedes of Russell on an outlap. Max is still in the pits, but looks like he's probably going to be coming out of the pits very soon. As also Leclerc, Lawson, Bortoleto, and Hadjar on an outlap. As Alonso saying on the radio, it was a good lap, and Aston Martin confirming to him that yes, that was a very good lap. And unless Russell, Verstappen, and Leclerc can go absolutely bonkers on this final lap, I think Alonso is probably going to end up on the second row of the grid here at worst. As Lando Norris now comes up to the final corner. He had pole here last year, and for his championship, he needs pole right now. As he starts his final attempt at pole position at the Hungaroring. Through turn one. Looked decent. There was a couple little corrections with the car, but it was okay. As Norris up to the first sector time beam. Slower than he's gone before, but the first sector is by far the least important. As Leclerc has done a purple middle sector. And Leclerc, slight bit of understeer to the final corner. Leclerc comes to the line and goes quickest. Leclerc on provisional pole by a quarter of a tenth. Can he stay there as both McLarens coming through? Norris is 2 tenths down on Leclerc after the first 2 sectors. As Piastri. Oh, Piastri is also 2 tenths down. Can Ferrari somehow grab pole here? As Norris through the final corner to the line. Norris goes third. Behind his teammate and Leclerc. Can Piastri somehow salvage pole? No, he doesn't. Leclerc stays on pole. Will he keep it though? Russell and Verstappen are still out there as Aston Martin have now dropped to 4th and 5th. Lawson is up to 7th as Max Verstappen hasn't even completed the middle sector yet. Bortoleto goes 7th ahead of Lawson. Bortoleto only 3.5 tenths off pole. As Verstappen 3 tenths off Leclerc for the first 2 sectors. Max, this is not a good lap. This might only put him 6th or 7th. This is a horrible lap for Verstappen. As Russell goes 4th, half a tenth off pole. Here comes Max Verstappen. Only 8th. Out-qualified by Bortoleto in the Sauber. But somehow, some way, Charles Leclerc has taken pole for Ferrari. What a lap. What a conclusion to qualifying in Hungary. And Leclerc took advantage of the McLarens being off the pace. McLaren were definitely off the pace there. Remember, the best time that McLaren did was a 1:14.8 in Q2. So McLaren had a lot of pace missing for some reason in that final stage of qualifying. But there you go. Charles Leclerc on pole position. And it is his first ever pole in Hungary for Ferrari. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That's why we call Leclerc one of the best in the business. So Leclerc on pole. Piastri 2nd. Norris 3rd. Russell 4th. Alonso 5th. Stroll 6th. The 3rd row lockout. Aston Martin will be happy with that. Bortoleto 7th. Max Verstappen 8th. In a Bortoleto and Lawson sandwich. Incredible. Lawson 9th. Hadjar 10th. And then Behrman 11th. Hamilton 12th. Sainz 13th. Colapinto 14th. Antonelli 15th. And then Tsunoda, Gasly, Ocon, Hulkenberg, and Albon completing the rest of the field. What a qualifying that was. And yeah, as I said, that is why Leclerc is one of the best in the business. The opportunity presented itself, and Leclerc took the opportunity. If he can win tomorrow, that would be incredible. But I really don't see him winning this race tomorrow. Because again, McLaren there was a lot more pace in that car than what they showed in Q3. I think it was the case really for a lot of, for everyone. The pace of the track dropped off in Q3 there, but McLaren, they'll be annoyed at that being beaten today, but they should be quick tomorrow. But there you go. Qualifying in Hungary. What a session. And as usual, qualifying at this track delivers. It's always delivered some very exciting fights for Poland. Yeah, just incredible. And the gap, by the way, between the top 6 was only just over a 1/10 of a second between the top 6 cars of Leclerc, Piastri, Norris, Russell, Alonso, and Stroll. Anyway, let me ask you guys, who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Hungary? So, Leclerc obviously is an option. Alonso, Bortoletto, and I'm going to put George Russell in there. I thought he was very good today. But my driver of the day is Charles Leclerc. Brilliant, brilliant job. And again, we'll see what he can do tomorrow, but I am still pretty confident that Ferrari are going to win tomorrow's race because, not Ferrari, McLaren. I'm pretty confident McLaren are going to win tomorrow's race because they have got quite a bit more pace in hand than what was shown in that session. But it's not impossible for Leclerc to win tomorrow. Because remember, Ferrari, they've got a better straight line speed than McLaren. So if Leclerc can hold on to the lead on the first lap, he can control the pace and maybe strategically, if Ferrari get the better of McLaren, Ferrari could win tomorrow's race. It's not impossible. There is a decent chance of it happening. But the start of tomorrow's race is absolutely crucial, not just for Leclerc, but the 2 championship contenders. And yeah, a couple of people saying Leclerc for driver of the day. Will F1 saying 3 green cars in the top 7? Absolutely. And not just in the top 7, line astern. 5th, 6th, and 7th. Because, though, I'm not doing a race watch along tomorrow, I will just quickly give a prediction as to what I think will happen tomorrow. Oscar Piastri, I think, will win the race. And then in second, I am going to go with Charles Leclerc to just about hold off Lando Norris, who will finish third. George Russell will finish fourth. And then I'm going to go Alonso 5th, Verstappen 6th, Stroll 7th, Bortoletto 8th, and then ninth I'll go actually no, I'll just remember Lewis Hamilton. I'll go Alonso 5th, Verstappen 6th, Hamilton 7th, Stroll 8th, Bortoletto 9th, and then either Lawson, Hadjar, or Behrman in 10th. And then you got Antonelli as well. I outside of the top 5, I have no idea. I really don't. But not thinking of changing your mind given this grid, please, Chazza? No. I still think it's going to be a boring race, even though what do you call it? even though we've got an exciting grid, I still think we're going to have a pretty boring race tomorrow. Because again, can't overtake around here, and these cars are horrible when it comes to following. And I think it will be this race tomorrow, pretty much all decided at the or on the first lap. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a lot better tomorrow than I'm saying, but I still expect McLaren to win the race tomorrow pretty comfortably. Astro saying Leclerc, Bortoleto, Alonso, Russell, his driver of the day rankings. Yeah, Bortoleto deserves a massive shout out for that qualifying effort. 7th on the grid. Meanwhile, his teammate down in 19th. But, well, may as well finish up the results of the poll because it's pretty obvious who's won it. We've had 56 votes. I asked who was your driver of the day for qualifying, and 89% of you went for Leclerc. So, yeah. And, yeah, he deserves to win it. Then Alonso on 7%, and then Bortoleto and Russell on 1%. But, yeah, what a qualifying session we've had here, guys. And hopefully tomorrow we will have a much better race, entertainment-wise, than I think it will be. But I still think it's going to be decided at the start, and I still think McLaren will win comfortably. Maybe not first, second, but I still think McLaren win comfortably tomorrow. But yeah, cheers, guys, for coming along to this qualifying watch-along. Again, I won't be doing a race watch-along tomorrow, so I hope you guys enjoy the race. No matter what happens tomorrow, though, if you want to hear my thoughts on what happens in the race, make sure to check out my podcast, which will come out on Monday, where I will obviously give my thoughts on whatever happens in the Hungarian Grand Prix. And then, after that, we'll kick off the summer break content. So this live stream, this is the last time I'll be speaking to you guys live until Saturday, August 30th, where I'll be back for qualifying for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. So make sure to join me for that. And of course, all the races after the summer break. But guys, thank you massively for coming along to not just this qualifying stream, but all the streams we've done in the first half of this season. 14 races done, basically. Just like that. It's incredible how quickly those 14 races have gone. The first race was the middle of March, which was, 4.5 months ago. Doesn't feel like it was 4.5 months ago. It feels like it was maybe a couple months at most. Incredible that we have whizzed by the first 14 races that quick. So yeah, thank you guys for coming along for all the streams so far. And again, I hope you can join us for the rest of the streams covering the rest of the Grand Prix events, qualifying, races, all of that, going forward for the rest of the season. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed tomorrow's race. And until my podcast on Monday reviewing whatever happens tomorrow, and until my next live stream, again on August 30th for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort qualifying session. And as well, until my summer break content, hope you guys enjoy tomorrow's race and enjoy the summer break. Hope you have a really great August, especially if you are going on holiday. And until my next bit of content on Monday, reviewing this Hungarian Grand Prix race tomorrow, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.